Welcome, everybody. I'm feeling really nice and privileged to be here after missing a week, and I hear that Ginny did such a good job that you never even realized that I was gone, but I'm back. And so welcome to the Rotary Club. Today we are having a presentation on strategies to operationalize equity. We also have student guests from Muskegon Catholic Central, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and waiting for a reflection from Tom Palmer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and
justice
justice for all.
And our little literacy for today. We can't have literacy, I don't think, unless we have libraries. And the first known library was established by the king of the Assyrians, Ashurbanipal, in 688 before the Common Era. I think it was called the Public Library of Nineveh. At this point, we have 350,000 more public libraries in the world, with 110,000 in the United States. So let's hear it for the libraries. Tom.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's reflection is on reflecting. Last weekend, I had time in the woods alone to reflect on everything. And I was hunting, and it was almost annoying when deer showed up because I was enjoying that piece so much. And the key thing with that is no screen time. And where I hunt, there's no cell service, so that was very good. And one thing, as an aside, we have had the best weather lately. And when people from the south complain about our weather, they need to come here the end of September and the first part of October, because it has just been phenomenal. Again, reflection on reflecting. Quiet time is important as most of us are very, very busy. And while busyness is lauded as a virtue in our society, we must reflect on what is keeping us busy. They can be positive things that are helping us and others, or they're negative things like running around with their chicken like our head cut off and putting out fires. So point one, I want us to just consider an exercise to reflect on your personal busyness and see where it's from. And if it's from stupid things, then make changes in that. Back when we had 4 teenagers in the house, I would get up extra early in the morning for my quiet time, because after one person got up, it was a zoo. And I just called it my quiet time, and I cherished that time. And if I had to get up, if someone was getting up at 6, I'd get up at 5:30 because I wanted that time. And I would, read, enjoy my coffee, pray, watch a video, and that was before DVDs or DVRs, so I would watch a video sometimes, but it was just my time, and I cherished that time. And one thing I did that I worked on was focusing on being thankful. We get wrapped up in the busyness and the nastiness of the world, and we all are blessed greatly, and we need to focus on that. An author I like back from the 90s, and this was I was doing this a lot, was Brian Tracy. And he said the first 15 minutes of your day is the rudder for your whole day. So how you spend that little first few minutes matters. And so for me, for my quiet time, it's a good thing. If for some reason I miss my quiet time, I'm just kind of off kilter. And sometimes, once in a while, my wife will get up with me and just because she's up. And I'm like, honey, go back to bed. I don't say that, but it's back here. So I take those 15 minutes at least, sometimes more, and I consider, what do I want to do today? What am I thankful for? How can I help someone today? How can I help myself today? And that little bit of time makes all the difference. And that quiet time, again, is precious to me. If I do it well, then my day goes pretty well. If I neglect it and hit the snooze bar and have to get up and rush out, it's just a different thing. So my second point on reflecting is you need to make quiet time for yourself at the beginning of the day. And I know some of you get up very early, and that's a challenge, but do that, and it will make a difference in your life. So my challenge is get up 15 minutes early and be still and quiet and reflect on being thankful and how you want to use your busyness. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Enjoy your lunch. We will reconvene in about 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, or I should say just welcome your attention back. We have a great list of guests to greet. And so I would ask our Votarians who have bringing guests with them to come and join us. Jason Bertoya, Chipman, Annette Smedley, Melissa Moore, Larry Fife, John Noling, and Tessa Hood all have guests. If you would come up with your guest. We must be the hottest ticket in town.
Hi, I'm Jason Bertoya, and my guest today is the lovely Beth Beeman, my colleague to the north, Managing Director of the Playhouse at White Lake, and also the President of Montague Whitehall Rotary.
Hey, everybody. All right, Melissa Moore with Reed Muskegon. My guest today, you might recognize from last week's presentation, is Marquise Childers Jr., who is engagement specialist with Access Health. He was really excited when he heard what the presentation was going to be this week, so I invited him to come back as my guest.
Marquise.
Hello, everyone. Contessa Hood here, and my guest is Alex Fonseca. He's the owner of Fresh Coat Painters of Muskegon and also a JC member and a wonderful leader in our community.
Between the yellow spots, all the way over. Good afternoon. My guest is V. Boringa. She is one of the people that are in charge of Law Day. She does an amazing job bringing all of the students and taking care and making sure everything is done properly. She also is an assistant prosecutor, and she is seriously thinking about becoming a member. So welcome, V.
All right, question for you. Do we have any Mona Shores fans in the house? Because we've got sailors here. All right, to introduce two of the seniors is Emmerette Clausen. She is one of the counselors at the high school.
Thank you. Yeah, we brought two of our best and brightest today. They're at the top of their classes. This is Sienna Billingsley and Gavin Stout, and they'll be introducing themselves in a second. Marty just asked me to say a couple things about Mona Shores. That we're off to a good start this year, feeling like things are returning to somewhat normal, but we've certainly learned some things from the last few years. Our theme this year is peace, love, and understanding throughout our building, so we're rocking that. And we also, I would say our sports teams are in full swing. Obviously, football's having some success, but Gavin here plays soccer, and districts are coming up, and we've got stuff going on with cross country and having a lot of success with that too. We're preparing for our singing Christmas tree. Coming to the Frauenthal in December. So lots of stuff going on.
Hi, I'm Sienna Billingsley. I'm a senior at Mona Shores. I'm involved in National Honor Society and our SEL Club, which stands for Social Emotional Learning. I'm a captain on the cross-country team, and I also run for track. After high school, I plan on attending either University of Michigan or Northwestern University, and I'd like to study medicine.
I'm Gavin. I'm also senior at Mona Shores. I am the vice president of the NHS club we have. I play soccer, and I'm also captain of the wrestling team. After high school, I plan to study medicine, but I don't really know where yet, so.
Figure that out.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chip Chipman, and I'm here with Emma, our foreign exchange student with Rotary from Austria.
Hi, as you already know, I'm Emma, and I am supposed to say hi in my native language. So, hallo, guten Tag, schön euch alle kennenzulernen.
I'm Joni Smith, and this is Design, our exchange student from Thailand.
Hi, I'm Design. So in my language, about hello is สวัสดีตอนบ่าย
Thanks.
Our speaker today, our presentation is going to be introduced now by Heidi Seitzema.
There we go. I'm Heidi Seitzema, and on behalf of the Program and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committees, I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Alfredo Hernandez. And before I do that, I just wanted to share a couple of lines from Rotary International's commitment statement for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We believe that exemplifying and embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion should be a part of everything we do at Rotary. At Rotary, we understand that cultivating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture is essential to realizing our vision of a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. So Alfredo is here. He said I don't have to read the whole bio, but I'm going to drop a couple of words. He was born and raised in Panama. He's lived in the United States since 1990. He's been in the Army, stationed in Hawaii, and then moved to Illinois and Michigan, here in Muskegon. He has a bachelor's degree from Grand Valley. Go whatever, yeah. And then, and then a graduate studies, pursued his graduate studies at Western Michigan University. Yep, that one. And he has a master's degree in comparative religion as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Alfredo Hernandez, who is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Heidi, for thinking of me, and it's great to see so many familiar faces. As Heidi mentioned, I've been in Muskegon as a resident now for over 20 years, so Muskegon is my home. Panama is my home too, but Muskegon is what I know now, and I have many friends in this room. I appreciate you being here. This presentation normally takes me at least an hour. Heidi told me to do it in 15, 20 minutes, so I was going to go very fast. But again, if you need any additional information, contact me, let Heidi know. I'll be happy to, on behalf of the department, make myself available in any way, shape, or form. I have a fancy monitor with a clock and everything, so we're going to get started. Okay, so operationalizing equity. Operationalizing is one of those words that I feel very proud to be able to pronounce, even though English is my second language. And I see people whose first language is English and they struggle with operationalizing. So I use it all the time. Just get used to me saying it. But what is operationalizing? What does that mean? Well, here we have a definition. We believe in a lot of definitions because they help us understand what is that we're talking about, right? So for the purposes of this conversation, operationalizing equity could be understood as the work of deconstructing what is not working around equity, reconstructing and supporting what works, shifting the ways we make decisions and think about DEI work, and healing and transformation of our structures, our environments, and ourselves. There are a lot of components related to operationalizing equity. And I know that this definition exactly doesn't make it 100% clear. So we're going to expand on it a little bit, but there are some key components that are part of this work at the organizational level. When we think about equity, we need to build an infrastructure that is embedded in equity. We need to grow DEI leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion within the organization. And we need to think about impact, the impact of our actions as we think about creating and sustaining more equitable outcomes. So an example of the ways in which we are doing this work internally as the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, it would be very easy for us to say, well, we don't have to do this work. I mean, for real, like we're working on discrimination. That's our function, to work through the eyes of compliance, but also to ensure that discrimination is erased from the state of Michigan. That's what we're working on. So why should we be doing this DEI stuff? Aren't we already just at the mountaintop? Well, the answer is no. We don't know anybody who is at the mountaintop in terms of being 100% great on all this work. And we recognize that we also are not on the mountaintop. So we are doing this work. We have a core team of folks made up of members from all units and divisions, division directors, managers, staff, and we have a dedicated space for learning where we engage in conversations every month and a half, specifically around principles related to DEI, how we could become more racially conscious, how we could become more culturally competent. One of the mistakes that we often make is that because we are professionals and because we are educated folks, we make the assumption that cultural competency comes already with it. PhDs, degrees, professionalism do not make us culturally competent. The work of becoming culturally competent, to understand even what that is, requires that we spend time learning about the root causes of inequity and understanding how it all got to where it is today. Even though we show up with good intentions every day, they don't quite cut it. So part of this work at the organizational level is to create a space to have real conversations about what this work is, what it means, the history and the background and the cultural practices that have shaped us at times in ways that we're completely unaware of. Some of the things that are important in building a DEI infrastructure include having a dedicated person to oversee DEI work. A lot of times we just think, well, we're all a bunch of good people, right? So let's treat each other with respect, we're good. Sorry, it doesn't work. You know how we know? Because we receive multiple discrimination complaints all the time in our department. And a lot of people never meant to, it was unintended, you fill in the blanks. There's still a discrimination complaint. The experiences were experienced. And we need to have the capacity to have someone in a position that understands how to navigate the complexity of this work to guide the work within the organization. Again, a dedicated space for learning. Already talked a little bit about that. And the purpose of that learning is that so that it shapes our decision-making process. The more socially conscious, racially conscious, culturally competent we become, the more our decision-making process is impacted. So in the DEI division, as the director, we're doing a bunch of different work, but we are engaged with state level work with multiple state agencies. each one having an equity officer or a DEI director. And there are a number of initiatives taking place right now to create and sustain equity across the state of Michigan. Again, none of this would happen if it wasn't because of Governor Whitmer's executive directive to establish an equity office in every state agency and to have a dedicated space for this work. None of this would be happening without that. And we're developing solutions, strategies, toolkits. If you check out our website, you'll have access to a lot of that information. We also have a Council for Government and Education on Equity and Inclusion, where we meet twice a year with superintendents, folks in local government, to talk about what's working and what's not working around our practices embedded in equity and inclusion. Why do we need a space for learning? What are we going to learn about? Don't we already know this stuff? I mean, are we not good people? What are we talking about? Don't we have a lot of more important things to do? Well, yes and no. We have a lot of things that are important. This is one of them. So as we do this work, some of the things that we could learn in that dedicated space for learning within an organizational space include reviewing what DEI means. I mean, I'm sure you will not be surprised to hear that sometimes people don't even know what the acronym means. And sometimes that's just a reflection of where things are in terms of what's really important to us and what's really not important to us. When you show up to a meeting, are you talking about green beans? More than likely not, because no one is thinking about green beans. So why should we talk about green beans? We have work to do. DEI is not green beans. So we need to be having conversations about DEI, but often we're not. We need to explore the root causes of implicit bias. A lot of times we may not even know what implicit bias is. One way of understanding implicit bias is unconscious preferences. We all have them. And the reality is the majority of us are willing to accept that we have them. But here's the issue, we stop right there. So we may acknowledge to ourselves that we have implicit biases. We may say to ourselves and to others, I'm a human being, I'm not perfect. I learned some things I never meant to learn. But are we doing the work to embrace a social responsibility to unlearn them? The answer is often not. We stop at the place of acknowledgement. Have we asked ourselves, do we ask ourselves as an organization, how does implicit bias impact me, the work we do, and the people we serve? And have we done the work to explore that? So for instance, if somebody was to ask you, after you acknowledge that you have biases, give me an example of a racial or sexist bias you have internalized, and tell me how it has impacted you, and tell me what you've done to mitigate it. How many of us have answers to those questions? And the reality is that if we're not doing that work of reflection, introspection to understand how we have been shaped in ways that many of us are completely unaware of, how are we going to make progress? Good intentions? That's not how it works. That's why it's unconscious. So we could become aware of our unconscious biases. We could acknowledge them. That's all part of the process, but we can't stop there. I mean, we do sometimes, but there are unintended consequences when we stop there. We need to increase our capacity to think systemically. What does that mean? The unit of success is not the individual, and whatever he or she ends up with is not because of how hard he or she worked. That's not systems thinking. So even though we're able to justify poverty sometimes through dominant narratives that tell us, for example, that if you work hard, you'll make it, and if you didn't make it, you didn't work hard enough, we're able to justify and rationalize poverty through individualistic narratives as such. Systems thinking is different. And it is important for us as an organization to understand how to increase our capacity to think systemically. Understanding that we're all shaped by culture, having a definition of what culture is, how we experience our experiences may be a beginning of a definition, and the factors that shape those experiences, becoming more aware of it, and being more intentional. No one wakes up in the morning wondering, I wonder how culture shapes the way in which I experience the world. Maybe some of us do sometimes from time to time, but even if we don't, it's doing so every day. And it's generally when we are experiencing the experience of being on the outside of the group that we become much more aware of not being a part of the group. When we're in the group, things just sort of blend in. We don't think about it. I had a friend of mine who is deaf who said to me, Alfredo, each time when I talk to you, I think about the fact that you're a hearing person. How many of us think that we're talking to a hearing person when we're talking to someone we're talking to? We don't think about that because that's just part of our reality. Those are the things that we take for granted. Exploring DEI tools and finding ways to develop more tangible solutions is also part of this work. We talked a little bit about culture. Having a definition of culture is important, and having an understanding of how implicit bias impact us is part of this work. It's the beginning of the work. Without this important reflection space at a personal, interpersonal, but also organizational level, there are tons of unintended consequences. And if you don't believe me, just come to our offices and we could show you some data. So we know that when it comes down to implicit bias, there are three key factors that shape unconscious biases. One is, as human beings, we're hardwired to form us and them based on the most trivial categories. That's not because we don't like each other or because we only like, no, because as human beings, we gravitate towards comfort, towards what's going to increase our survival. We may not be thinking survival when we choose the familiar, but it's deeply embedded in that. Because the unknown, the unfamiliar at an unconscious level represents for us less safety. We also have and are impacted by polarized messages, and they come to us from all directions. Stereotypes play a key role in the formation of those biases. And those stereotypes are formed by multiple repetitive polarized messages that shape us in ways that sometimes, again, we're completely unaware of. And our brain also likes to follow cognitive scripts. There are tons of exercises and examples that we have to expand on this. If there are 3 apples and you take away 2, how many do you have? The answer is 2. If there are 3 apples and you take away 2, how many do you have? 2, right? But we don't have time to pay attention to pronouns. Our brain is already functioning on autopilot, and we end up with the wrong answer to a question we know the right answer to simply because we follow cognitive scripts. So when you take into consideration all of this, this is where unconscious biases and unconscious behavior comes from. And one thing is to acknowledge that it's real. But again, stopping there doesn't solve the problem. It's important to have a common language when we talk about all this stuff, right? Equality and equity. I know you guys are familiar with this picture. But again, one is everybody gets the same thing. We don't create equitable access. One says not everybody gets one, and everybody has access. So it's important to have a clear picture of the access we want to create when we're doing work embedded in equity. Diversity and inclusion, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, and we talk about diversity as if it is inclusion. No, it's not. There are a lot of diverse places that are not inclusive. So it is important to recognize that inclusion is not a natural consequence of diversity, and that we need intentional strategies to embed inclusion in a diverse place. Sometimes diversity doesn't even exist, so we have to even work on that first. But once we establish a diverse place, to assume that it's going to become inclusive automatically is a big mistake. As a matter of fact, research reminds us that it just increases the opportunities for us to reject each other unless we are actually actively doing this work. When we talk about systems, it's important to recognize that systems of advantage, sexism, racism, ableism, all those things are not the same as prejudice. Every single person in this room here, more than likely at one time or another, you have experienced discrimination. Please know that the experience of discrimination and systemic discrimination are not one and the same. Sometimes we mix them up. So when we talk about this, when we talk about systems of advantage, we need to recognize that they require the combination of power, which is access to social, cultural, economic resources, decision-making, and some type of prejudice. That leads to the formation of a system of advantage, which inevitably creates a system of disadvantage. And one example of it would be gender. Think of gender, right? Have we achieved gender equity? Please notice that I didn't say, have we not made any progress? No. Have we achieved gender equity? No. How do we know that? How do we know it's not my opinion? We have plenty of data, right? Gaps in pay. When was the last time we had a woman president in the last 2.5 centuries? So that's an example of 100% male dominance. Now, we don't have to like all those things, but we could begin to acknowledge that they are true so that we could be more proactively engaged in solutions. There are plenty of narratives that try to undermine the systemic condition by saying, it's not true. You know, we're all the same now. No, we're not the same. So why are we saying we're the same? Well, I don't see color. Well, why would you say that when you see it? So denial is not the same as color consciousness. And we need to understand all those differences, because independently of how good our intentions are, we continue to see unintended outcomes. And I haven't run into that room where people say, hey, we're the evil people. I have not run into that room yet. So it's important to have a strategy for doing this work. Let's help people, let's empower people. You learn some things you never meant to learn. You have a social responsibility to unlearn it. The system was set in place before you came. But are you able to acknowledge that the system was here and that the system continues to exist and that the system continues to create inequities based on race, gender, class, sexual orientation, and all of it? And if you are, then let's move people away from guilt and blame. It doesn't do anything. It actually pushes people away. So having a conversation about intersectionality, about systems of advantage, about the things that I'm talking about is an important strategy for creating more consensus on the work that we have to do. I think I have about a minute left. Why do we talk about race sometimes, people ask? Well, here are some things. But here's the important thing that we need to keep in mind. When we start with race, we start at the bottom of social disparity. So inevitably, we're working on equity for all. So sometimes when we're wondering, like, wait, what about people with disability? What about a racial equity lens is not seeking to ignore all of those things. It's just seeking to ensure that we don't leave race out of the conversation when we talk about equity, so that we could be more comfortable. That's all I got. I was told that I had a few minutes for Q&A, so I'm open.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question then.
Okay.
My question is, I can do this, I can use my own microphone. All right, cool. See, how are you, what kind of methods that can you offer to a school board, a staff, a business group to walk through these issues?
Yes, thank you. We unfortunately have no tools, but good luck. No, I'm just kidding. There are a number of tools that you could find on our website. So just Google MDCR and get to the DEI division. Just a few tools that may come handy for any organization that's seeking to understand how to do some of this work, how to get started. We have a racial equity toolkit available on our website, which is specifically designed for organizations that are getting started. And this was done in collaboration with the School of Law and Policy at U of M. We also have an organizational equity audit, basically just a set of questions that you could ask yourself within your organization to assess your DEI practices. See, a lot of times people think that equity is about ensuring that we get the people that are not in the room. That's not what it's about. What it's about is to ensure that we all become racially conscious and culturally competent, and then the people that need to be in the room are going to begin to appear. But this idea that we just need to fill in the boxes and get somebody in, so that tool can help you with that. Another tool that I think is really helpful is the Intercultural Development Inventory, which is a globally recognized tool, but it helps us to measure, monitor, and evaluate cultural competency at a personal level, but also at an organizational level. This is about a one-year project in which, again, we measure and evaluate where we are as an organization today and where we are a year later after a bunch of work. And one of the nice things about this tool is that it points to the gap between our perceived cultural competency and our actual cultural competency. Because again, if you ask anybody how culturally competent are you, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm great, let me tell you about it. But the assessment is gonna say something different between your perceived and your actual orientation. So those are a few of the tools. Again, we have many other, but I'm happy to share more information with anyone here. And I see another question.
Yes, I have more of a comment than a question. Do I need this? All right, usually I don't, but I guess for me, as a minority within this community, I've certainly experienced it a lot, different places, different times, but the reality is this community here within itself has been very warm, and I see it as a community that has always welcomed all. Now, I'm talking in particular race. I'm not going to step on the toes of gender because I can only speak about what I know. But I've always believed, based upon my father's teachings, that it's our responsibility as minorities to take first and foremost responsibility for ourselves. My father, many, many years ago, showed me that exact same picture of the fence. He said, what would you do? And I said, well, I could do one of two things. I could either ask somebody to let me use their box or go get my own. So I love that responsibility, but I love this community. I sit on many boards, and initially I used to be very defensive and ask, why do you want me? Because if it's for the color of my skin, you're asking the wrong guy. But if it's because I have something to offer, then I'll be a participant on your board. Well, as I've grown within this community, I realized it's not because of the color of my skin, but rather they want some input from somebody who's diverse. Also, I realized that, as my father has taught me, I should take the responsibility to try and educate not only you, if I need to, but myself as to not being so defensive about some of the things that have happened to me in my life, because I realize they're the ones who are uneducated about my food, my hot sauce, or whatever it may be. So once again, it always goes back to take your own responsibility. Clean up your own yard before I try to accuse somebody else of anything at all. Because the reality is, I don't feel that I've experienced, especially within, as I've gotten older, some of these issues. And I know that not everybody's going to agree with me on this one.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it's important that when we talk about things such as discrimination and diversity, we understand the history of systemic racism in our country. These are tough topics that are hard to discuss, but it is inappropriate to put the responsibility of oppression on the one who was oppressed. So when we talk about equity, although there is always personal responsibility and there's always this idea that we should try to do our best to move ahead, and I stand behind that 100% and have tried to do that in my life, when we put the responsibility on those who have been harmed by a system to fix the system, then we speak against the very nature of what the system is. The system is racism. The system is oppression. And if we want to change racism and oppression, we have to start with the place of power and not put that responsibility on those who have been harmed by it.
When you're preparing your budget, do we look at all the inequities, including race, in terms of where we put the money to cure the problem?
Yes, that's a good question that I'm not 100% equipped to answer because I don't work for the state budget office, nor do I work for the governor's office. But I have some idea in terms of how decisions are made. And yes, we take into consideration all the marginalized groups and all the folks who have been historically and culturally marginalized as we think about decisions related to creating access and opportunities for all.
You've been doing this DEI work for a long time with different organizations. I wonder, how has your toolkit changed over the years, or what tools were effective 10 years ago that aren't? Just that journey.
Well, I would say that when it comes down to dismantling isms, racism, sexism, ageism, and all the other isms, and not all systemic discrimination ends on isms. When it comes down to doing that work, the work is evolving, it's not changing as much. I think when it comes down to dismantling all these isms that we just talked about, we're flying and building the airplane at the same time. We haven't dismantled racism. So we don't have a template that tells us here's how you do it if you want to do it. We're doing it and learning at the same time. But I would say that in my experience in this work, I've gone from working with a focus on organizations and organizational change to a focus on institutional and structural change. So having an opportunities to collaborate with multiple state agencies and address issues related to racism and sexism and other isms. It's very different from the organizational space, but some of the things remain the same, so yeah. Thank you, I know I've gone over, appreciate it.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge. It's something that we are close to our hearts, and we really love to learn from you. And as a sign of our appreciation, we are going to be making a contribution to the Malala Fund as a speaker recognition. And now for something completely different. It's birthday time. We have birthdays this month. Cindy Larson is on October 6th. Heidi Seitzema, October 11th. Ed Hendrickson, October 12th, and Missy Horton also on October 12th. And as these people approach the front with their birthday gifts for us, we'll sing them their song. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Now is the time for our member spotlight. We are a large group of people with wonderful individuals that stand out for what they do here and what they do when they're at home. And so we're going to hear today from Jules Terry.
Hello, I'm Jules Terry, and I joined Rotary, I believe it was 2017, but my dad was involved with Rotary my whole life in Durango, Colorado. So I've been around Rotary for a long time. I just think that the service above self is very important, especially nowadays. I'm married to Dr. Rob Terry, and we have a son named Justin and a lovely daughter-in-law named Jenny. My husband and son are both dentists at Terry Dental that we own. I'm also a development coach for the U.S. Paralympic ski team out in Park City. And that's pretty much my passion, is deep powder skiing with my husband when I'm not coaching. I love the camaraderie. It's fun to go to Rotary in Muskegon and see all of the guys. I consider myself Jules, sitting at the Knights of the Round Table. And I have learned so much about our community just from going to these lunches. I've also been able to meet more and more people. And then it's fun because the Rotary in Muskegon, our meetings are based on the community and the growth of Muskegon and the surrounding area. And then when I go home to Park City, Heber City especially, it's about how many cows are in each personal pasture, how many cows escape their pastures, how many planes are flying into our small community, and then how many trees are we planting. So it's the same idea, just a different little perspective on two different really awesome communities I'm very lucky to be a part of.
Now, I did not know that about Jules, that she is a cow catcher. So that's something we have in common. We have a great opportunity now. We're going to induct a new member. So if Tom Palmer will come up with Joanne, we will get an induction.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome Joanne Stoneburner. She's at Shelby State Bank. And Joanne is a Muskegon native who grew up in the Fruitport area and attended Muskegon Catholic Central. Joanne and her husband, Bob, currently live in the North Muskegon area, and they're with their two daughters who attend North Muskegon Public Schools. Joanne is also has two grown daughters and two grandchildren, and grandkids are the best. After graduating high school, Joanne served 6 years in the military, working as a chief crew on a C-130 cargo aircraft. She also attended college at Muskegon Community College and then went on to Baker College, earning a bachelor's degree in business management. During college, Joanne took a job as a bank teller at Huntington Bank. Since beginning her banking career with Huntington, she has worked for National City Bank, which later became PNC Bank, Independent Bank, and most recently, Shelby State Bank. Joanne has held many job titles in the financial industry and is currently a mortgage loan officer for Shelby State Bank for Muskegon, Ottawa, and parts of Newaygo and Oceana counties. Joanne has always tried to find time to give back to her community, and she's been especially passionate about helping children in need. Over the years, she has taught junior achievement classes at local schools, coached youth soccer teams, packed sack lunches for Kids Food Basket, and serves on the PTO board of North Muskegon Elementary. Her family attends Sacred Heart Church and volunteer to serve coffee and donuts after masses. She has also participated in highway pickup, cleaning up a 2-mile stretch along US 31 that Shelby State Bank has adopted. Joanne became interested in joining Rotary to further her involvement in the community. She is excited to find new ways to lend a hand and to make connections with members who also see the value of working together to accomplish great things. Please welcome Joanne Stoneburner.
Fellow Rotarians and honored guest, the Rotary Club of Muskegon is privileged to induct a new member. Joanne, you are beginning a great adventure in leadership, service to the community, and humanity. The Rotary Club of Muskegon has accepted you as a person of good character and high ethical standards with a heart for service. Your sponsor has invited you to be part of a worldwide organization dedicated to fostering service above self. but it is through your own actions that you become a Rotarian. We encourage you to learn about Rotary by actively participating in the club, including attending meetings, social events, and projects. It is my pleasure to give you this pin, which time will do for me, by which your fellow Rotarians in the community will recognize you as a member. We ask you to wear it proudly. I would also like to challenge you to share the gift that has been given to you to be a representative of Rotary in the wider community by sharing the spirit of the four-way test in your work, service, and play, and inviting those you meet along the way to join in this mission. Do you accept this challenge? Yes. Together as Rotarians, we work to enrich youth, ensure health, develop communities, and promote peace. Please rise and welcome our newest Rotarian. We have a new Rotarian, but we also have some brave Rotarians. So Jenny Sprague is going to let you enroll in the brave Rotarian roster.
Periodically, Muskegon Rotary sponsors what we call Brave Rotarian contests. And these, where we get 10 to 20 participants, everybody contributes $100 that goes to support and recognize the work of the Rotary Foundation. And then whoever wins receives a Paul Harris Fellow Award, either for themselves or they can give it to another deserving individual. And this is one of Rotary's most prestigious recognitions. Now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. This coming October 24th is World Polio Day, and Muskegon Rotary is going to participate financially in the effort to eradicate polio as a disease worldwide. Last year, we were this close to eradicating polio as only 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, had cases. Since then, the map has changed. We're making significant progress, but polio is being detected in places where it hasn't been found in decades, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Malawi. Mozambique announced its first polio outbreak of wild polio virus in 30 years. So if polio is present anywhere, it's a threat to all of us. So in honor of President Jane's literacy program, and to also support the effort to eradicate polio, we are having a Brave Rotarian contest. It's called Poetic License, and it is designed to support Jane's work and to support the work of the Rotary Foundation to eradicate polio. Jamie Hecker, who is in charge of our Polio Plus campaign, has a sign-up sheet that hopefully is making its way around the room, and you're, oh, right here. I didn't even see you there, Jamie. Thank you. Oh, go. So we look for 20 of you to step forward and be brave. The contest will begin on Thursday, October 27th, when 2 contestants will be eliminated from the competition and will continue weekly until January 12th, when the 2 remaining contestants will be declared our winners of the Poetic License contest. Now, our contestants will each write a check of $100 to the Muskegon Rotary Foundation, and the one difference here is that all the money collected, the $2,000, will go to the effort to eradicate polio in honor of World Polio Day. And so you also will be supporting that, and we appreciate your contributions to help with this effort. I look forward to your participation and encourage you to sign up and take Poetic License like I just did. So, thank you.
And one more announcement is from Ellen Alpert, who is filling out the roster for those who wish to offer reflections to our group. So if anyone is inclined to, please find Rabbi Albert after the meeting. And now, the raffle. And Ed has the raffle. Ed, the birthday boy, has the raffle. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yay. So now we are drawing to a close of our meeting, but before we do, I want to thank our guests for joining us, Beth Beeman, Design, V. Boringa, Marquis Childers, Carrie Vanderhoff, Emma, our exchange student, Alex Forsica, the guest of Contessa Hood, and next week I'm going to practice the names. It's almost as bad as operationalize sometimes. And I want to thank our student guests from Mona Shores. And so with that, let us stand and recite the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And it'll be beneficial to all concerned.